Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Phish Stories, Episode 3, The New Threats Menacing Microsoft 365 Users Today. This event is brought to you in partnership with SlashNext and produced by Actual Tech Media. This is the third event in our series of Phish Stories events. We've had a great time doing these. I've learned a lot. I know the audience has too, with so many excellent questions coming in and so many expert answers provided by our expert presenters. We've got another great episode lined up for you today. Before we get started, just a few things that you should know about the event. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as your moderator. We want this to be educational, and we encourage your questions there in the questions box of your audience console. We'll be doing our best to answer those throughout the event, but I'll be queuing the best questions up for a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I'll call your attention to the questions box that way. And we want to help you to solve your security challenges. I know this is a challenging time for anyone responsible for the organization's security today. So that's the goal of the event in the Phish Stories series, the goal of all of our events. I also want to point out the handouts that are available in the handouts tab. There's a link to request a demo of the SlashNext solution. There's a link for a free risk assessment and also the State of Phishing 2021 report. You want to check out those links before you go. We will be announcing the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card prize on the live event. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms can be found there in the handouts tab. We're doing our best question prize again here. We started this new in 2021. All prize winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize policy, and best question prize winners will be contacted after the webinar. And with that, I'm excited now to bring in and introduce you to our expert presenters. Welcome, Mr. Patrick Harr, Chief Executive Officer at SlashNext. And our special guest for this episode of Phish Stories is Atif Mushtaq, Founder and Chief Product Officer at SlashNext. Atif has an amazing security background. Just so you know, he spent most of his career on the front lines in the war against cybercrime. He's worked with law enforcement and other global organizations to take down some of the biggest malware networks out there. And he's been quoted in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and Dark Reading, just to name a few. So we're honored to have you on the event today. Thanks for being here, Atif.
Thanks, David.
Excellent. All right. And thank you, of course, as well, Patrick. Always great to have you back on another episode of Phish Stories. Yeah. Let's go ahead and kick this off. I mean, as I mentioned, this is a challenging time for anyone out there dealing with security in their enterprise. There's new threats happening every day, and a big hot target is Microsoft 365. Just about everyone has been moving to the cloud in some form, and Microsoft 365 has been, one of the most popular software as a solution systems out there for companies. And so our first question of the day here is, how has the phishing landscape changed in the past year? And, really, what does it look like today? Patrick, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, again, great to be here with you. It's always fun to share the knowledge of what we're seeing in the market right now, particularly as related to the threat landscape and phishing. So as we talked a couple times on the last few episodes, we have seen a pretty significant shift in the threat landscape, specifically for phishing. And if we look at last year, 2020, it was obviously in many respects a marked year, what I call the year of the Phish. The reason for that, everyone moved from inside the perimeter, inside the office, to obviously working remote, learning remote. And with that, it dramatically opened up what we would call the attack surface to a particular user. And I think we have a couple slides I just want to walk through here, what I mean by this. And so in many respects, I'd like to say we've gone from a first generation approach. And if you see on the left-hand side, it was a very simple phishing attack. It was a bad email, a copied and paste, a PayPal logo, and with the intent to steal credentials, steal your username and password. Again, very easy to discern. You could tell in many respects it might have been written by a bad Russian dialect or some other nation state actor, and send it through your Yahoo email or your Gmail, but very easy to discern and detect. What is very different, and we really saw this past year, With the access to tools these bad actors have today, like they've never had before, you have effectively the combination of very, very low cost compute, open source AI models, meaning I can actually take these artificial intent machines, intelligence machines, to generate attacks. You combine that with basically known behavioral information that you can source out of the dark web or LinkedIn or any other place they can get information about you, and you automate attacks. And so what this has done is it's now created a recipe for the bad actors to create extreme havoc, really what I would call across your digital attack surface. And so what I mean by that, you now have the ability, these bad actors are launching these attacks minute by minute. It's no longer just hours, days, weeks, and they're launching these attacks may live for 24 hours, 48 hours, and then they go away and they create a new one. And I should add one final danger aspect to this is these attacks look like they're coming from legitimate infrastructure. And so what I mean by that, it looks like it comes from the Google domain, or it looks like it comes from Adobe's domain or Microsoft's domain. And that's specifically what we're going to talk about today. And that's the reason why I wanted to invite Atif on here as it relates to Microsoft 365. So we are seeing a significant evolution and generation of these attacks. They're extremely targeted. They're coming across different channels of communication. So let's talk about a little bit with Microsoft 365. Why is the attack surface opened up so much there? A, it's the most popular productivity tool out there on the planet. B, you not only have email, you have OneDrive, you have Teams, you have other communication channels, right, that I can reach a Phish to you, and I can target it with very specific information. And this is the reason what we are seeing right now. Not only are we seeing a dramatic increase of these attacks, second, the target of these attacks, and third, the success of these attacks has never been, it's really unprecedented, particularly this last year. And the reason for that, if you look at all what we would call the first generation of tools, first generation of defenses, whether that be your secure email gateway or your proxies, or your firewalls, or your endpoint security solutions, even some of the new ones, they were all tuned to stop that first generation attack, that bad, Russian email that copied that PayPal. In fundamentally, what we've seen now, number one, as I said, you have to be able to not only detect and respond to these particular attacks, but most importantly, you have to detect those at time of creation, because if you don't do that, you're going to have these attacks evade these current environments. And specifically, as again, we're here to talk about how they're evading the Microsoft 365 defenses that almost everyone has in place today.
Great point, Patrick. Here's a question that came in from Steve. He's asking, really with so many attackers hitting Microsoft 365, should we just keep our, Exchange and Office on premises? Should we even be considering moving to the cloud? What's your take on that one?
I don't think necessarily it's just because you've, quote, moved to the cloud. Obviously, you have internal Exchange environments that also allow the emails in, right? Or you have internal collaboration tools that folks are running. So it's not necessarily just a quote, cloud service based a reason why people are being attacked. It's more of the way people communicate and the open channels that they're able to now access. And so Microsoft 365 just being a very, very popular way to, again, not only do email, but collaborate through Teams and share documents. It's opened up that attack surface. And second, again, because of how Microsoft's own tools are designed to catch that first generation approach, it's a reason why we see upwards of 80% of these second generation attacks get through a Microsoft 365 environment. And that's not just unique to Microsoft, it's unique to other folks, whether it be on the G Suite side, whether it be on, again, other productivity tools, other social channels. It's just that every one of those defenses were tuned to stop that first generation, very easy to detect, almost a static type of attack, versus these very targeted, sophisticated attacks that are generated by machines. You're going to go where you have the most success. And if it's the most popular tool out there, obviously you're going to attack that particular tool.
Absolutely. So let's now move on. And this question's for you, Atif. What type of attacks are targeting Microsoft 365 users now? What have you been seeing?
Well, end of the day, I mean, the motives are actually pretty much the same, right? I mean, people are going after your intellectual property or data. In some cases, we are seeing internet scams where the BEC like scams where the motive is actually money, right? So what we are seeing, the motives are the same, but the way they are trying to achieve their goals are actually is becoming very, very different. And in the coming slides, I'm going to show you some of very unique ways we have seen that attackers are bypassing Office 365 defenses, and at the same time, phishing training. Because remember, I mean, right now there are two type of defenses, right? Your automated system employed by Office 365, and at the same time, people are spending quite a bit of money training their users. So bad guys have to fool two things before they become successful. And these attacks, that I'm going to show you, they're actually revolving around how to bypass all these layers, right? Human layer and the automated layer. So in the first attack that I'm showing, I mean, these are two spear phishing attack that we recently seen targeting two organizations. And you can see it's not a default vanilla Office 365 page. Actually, attackers are using the original background and the logo used by that company's official Office 365 account. And it's not a job of just a simple copy paste because it's not scalable, right? So what we have found that Office 365 has exposed some public APIs that can be used to dynamically fetch the customization of a company's web page. So when you click a phishing link, the first request goes to Office 365 and they pull the screenshot and the logos from the original account, and then they create a fake login pages around that. Now the purpose is, first of all, fool the automated system. Some of these systems, they simply do the 100% comparison between the fake login and the original logo. It's going to fail them. At the same time, during phishing training, most probably the guys have seen the yellow fake login page, and now suddenly there's a page that is using their company's background and logo, and you suddenly establish that trust, and that is a trust that is needed for that user to enter credentials. Another attack that we are seeing is use of cloud services. I mean, we all know that the legacy technologies, they use domain reputation system to detect phishing. A big part of them is, okay, if the domain is a newly registered domain, is about registered 30 days ago, or it is hosted on a suspicious infrastructure, okay, block that. And those were 1.0 attacks, right? But things are changing now. A lot of time, the emails that are sent to victims, they first create fancy looking PDF files and they embed actual phishing link within those PDF file, and then they upload these PDF file on popular cloud platforms like Dropbox, your Google Drive, Adobe Spark, and the phishing link would point to these type of PDF files. And then once user read the full PDF file, is going to click on that link, and then the actual phishing page will open. And this is clearly an attempt to fool automated system. First of all, you fool them at the domain level, and the second, a lot of system, they try to extract the text out of phishing pages and then run them against signatures. It's much more difficult to extract text out of PDF file. You need very specialized tools in order to do that, and they simply, most of the legacy system, they simply don't use these type of attacks, right?
Hey, Atif,
Next.
you want to just quickly comment? We're seeing these attacks in the live assessments that we're doing with customers. So these are actual attacks embedded in current customer environments, right?
Yes, I mean, some of these we have found through assessments, recent assessment that we have done. And an interesting thing is that, I mean, Office 365, I mean, they miss a lot. We all know that. But they have a mechanism that if in future they detect any phishing link that they initially missed, they can actually auto delete those links, right? And what we have seen that when we run the assessment, right, the only type of links that remain in the inboxes are these type of advanced attacks. All the easier ones, they actually either get blocked in the very beginning, or sooner or later after 24 hours, Microsoft realize their mistake and they pull it. But these type of attacks, these are the complete blind spot, and we are seeing some 3 months old emails sitting in people inboxes, and Office 365 has no idea that this mail exists.
So
Okay.
another attack. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead with your question.
So another attack here is Microsoft 365 phishing through Google Forms. So how does that work with a Google form and a Microsoft 365 phish at the same time?
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is something interesting, right? I mean, a lot of time people are taking surveys and taking information through Google Form. I mean, it's part of the IT ecosystem now, right? So in this particular case, there was an issue. There was a kind of a survey offered by the administrator and asking you to change your password due to some security breach, right? And in this case, it's a complete Google Form. There's no fake login page. They're just making it look like an IT support case and luring people that, oh, it's just an IT support case. And remember, the purpose is to fool user. People get used to similar type of attacks. Usually you can't really fool a user by sending the same fake login 10 times, right? They'll get used to it, right? And all these tricks are actually there to actually don't let their mind settle and give them something that they haven't seen during training phase. And I've seen quite a bit of training courses. None of them is telling them that a phish can be sent through Google Forms.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, people are used to filling out Google Forms as quickly as possible, and I would never suspect one of being a phish personally. And then there's another one here, these automated, like, are you a human tests.
David, I was going to comment. You can see that same thing through SurveyMonkey, right? So it's these are, again, as he's pointing out, very popular.
All Typeform, all of these are actually a prime target, and people are so used to filling these surveys, they get fooled. Again, the purpose is to give them so many unique attacks that they can't settle down. Again, they have to fool humans as well because they are trained, relatively more trained than they used to be about 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, so the last attack that I'm showing you, I believe this is purely to stop automated system. So in this particular case, the link, when you click on a phishing link, a page will open with a captcha. And unless the user solve this captcha, and this usually I've seen Google captcha mechanism being used, the phishing page won't be visible. And the purpose is simple. I mean, do not let signatures parse the text of the page, because some of these vendors, they're still living in the signature age, right? So they can actually grab the title of the page and say, oh, it looks like Office 365, right? But what happens with these captcha file is that the automated system, they don't have to actually solve this captcha and reach to the original page where they can run some of their signatures, right? And at the same time, it make the phishing attack much more authentic, I would say, because the people thinking that, okay, maybe it's the extra security and the Microsoft is asking for that captcha file, and they feel more comfortable. So I believe it's both for full user and at the same time the automated systems.
Scary, advanced, very advanced attacks. I love those examples. Thank you for sharing those. Let's move on to the next question here, and that is, how can companies really protect against these attacks? They seem, I mean, are they indefendable, or is it possible?
Well, I hate to break the bad news, right? I'm already telling you quite a bit of bad news, right? So here's the thing. I mean, we detect thousands and thousands of phishing links on daily basis. Closer to 60% of phishing links are that come into our thread feed are coming from email. And the rest of the 40%, they don't even touch email. And these are coming from social media, search engines, mobile, all these mediums that have nothing to do with email, right? So in the first part, I showed you that, okay, you have all the defenses in place and Office 365 is unable to stop it. How about the stuff where the Office 365 protection doesn't even exist or any protection exists at all? And these are the next generation attacks that I'm saying and I would call these multi-vector attacks. And some of the example are actually in the next slide. So for example, on the right-hand side, here's a text scam that we recently found. It was spreading through Google search engines. It's a text season. And what happens that in the first phase, the bots will do the search engine optimization to actually make these links up in the search engine ranking. And then what happens that one day I'm actually searching on COVID relief fund or tax refund or something like that, and maybe on the 6th or 7th Google link will be actually the phishing page, and you click on that, and here's the government and UK side is asking you that, okay, if you want to claim your refund, why don't you give me this information? So we are seeing quite a bit of phishing just spreading through Google Ads and search engines. Phishing is also, can you go back? Yeah. So phishing over SMS, I mean, it's a well-known concept, right? We're seeing quite a bit of phishing where the bad guys will send you phishing link either through text, or in some cases, there's no link at all. I mean, these are typical CEO scams where they simply ask you to transfer money, right? And they know that, I mean, there's no one stopping these type of attacks. iOS and Android, they don't have any built-in protection against SMS phishing. Okay, so the last two attacks that I'm gonna show you is the first is WhatsApp. I mean, there are billions of users who are using WhatsApp, so why not try to phish people over WhatsApp? So we're seeing quite a bit of attacks, and usually, instead of initial website will ask you to start the chat, and the Google WhatsApp the WhatsApp offer quite a bit of APIs that you can use to start chatting with other friends, and we are seeing quite a bit of scams happening over WhatsApp, where they simply ask you to send the text or the message, or simply ask them to call, and then you're talking to some guy sitting in some other part of the world trying to lure you into either money transfer scams or something similar. And the last piece is that the malware are still there, and we are seeing quite a bit of malware, or the rogueware I would call them, spreading through advertisement. And all of you guys have actually seen at some point of time that you were browsing to a legitimate website, and suddenly there's a pop-up on your screen asking you to download something, or asking you to fill a credit card information form, and all these things are pretty popular. And again, I mean, you have no defenses against these type of attack because you spent all of your money protecting your email user. So you could be under attack via personal email, you could be under attack via other communication mediums, right? And the bad guys are, they're going to try multiple things. We have seen quite a bit of attacks spreading through LinkedIn. So again, if the purpose is to protect user, you need a comprehensive multi-vector protection. Purpose is not to protect email from phishing, right? Purpose is to protect user from phishing, and so you have to protect there wherever the user are going, and that's pretty much everywhere. So now, I mean, I have, I think, a couple of minutes left, and here I'm going to talk about. I showed you all these attacks that I'm telling you that okay, other people are unable to catch, but how we are trying to do it. And the reason is that we're using behavior analysis as compared to legacy technologies like domain reputation. I mean, in the very beginning, when I founded this company, I mean, I had two things. I'm not going to use signatures, and I'm not going to use domain reputation, because I was seeing that the bad guys are really focusing in fooling these two technologies. So what I came up with was behavior analysis. The truth is in the page. So I said, okay, you have wealth of information available, right? And why we simply look into the URL? Why don't we try to detect phishing by seeing the page itself? As a matter of fact, most of smart user, they try to detect phishing by seeing the page, and then they further compare it with the URL. It doesn't like that. I mean, they use domain reputation. Nobody knows the domain reputation on the fly to skip a phishing page. It's just the intuition and your ability to read natural language, and your ability to see graphics is actually what enables you to avoid phishing. So we thought, okay, you know what? If the truth is in the page, then why do we even care about URLs? If the page is serving phishing content, the URL is automatically bad. So now the question is that how are you going to see the page that user is seeing? And for that, we use virtual browsers. So every URL that we inspect, we don't try to do the domain reputation or the URL signature. All we do, spun up a virtual browser in our cloud and fully render that page. And once the page is fully rendered, we extract all the forensic information like HTML, text, images out of that web page, and then we feed it to our AI engine that use computer vision, optical character recognition, and natural language processing to detect it pretty much the way the human would detect. I mean, you would detect logo, what kind of information this page is asking for, etc. And all of that information, which is a wealth of information, goes to a machine learning engine that is designed to give a single verdict. We may be the only company in the world that doesn't have risk scores. We are a binary system. Either it is phishing or it is not phishing. So we have almost no false positive, and the reason is that we are consuming so much information that other people simply don't have. They have a tiny domain information that they have, and they have to make a decision based on that tiny information. And we all know that the more information you have, the better decision making you have, right? So when you get all this wealth of information from a web page, I mean, automatically your system is supposed to be much more accurate. Another thing is that a lot of people, they simply inspect email-based phishing, right? But SlashNext is a multi-vector company. So another thing is that our ability to hunt phishing attack across internet, across different communication medium, that is also what we call our threat hunting cloud. Our threat hunting cloud can extract link from all these suspicious emails. At the same time, we are actively crawling to find links that are coming from advertisement, WhatsApp, and all that. And we are feeding all that to our virtual browser cloud that can very precisely detect the phishing attacks. And all this intelligence gets fed to our endpoints and other solutions. So now you have something that is multi-vector, multi-payload phishing detection coming from email, corporate email, personal email, WhatsApp, doesn't really matter to us.
Yeah, this is really cool. Go ahead, Patrick.
Hey, just going to ask Atif a question real quick here. Can you also talk about just a real quick, obviously this detection engine is targeted about 99.1% of detection rate of those phishing attacks. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done on the actual browser and the mobile phone itself by using some on-device natural language processing as well for targeted spear phishing?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the recent advancement we have made is ability to detect SMS messages that do not contain a link. So now, I mean, the technology that I just explained you, it revolves around a phishing link, right? So if there's no link, what you're gonna do? If one day someone asks you to transfer, pretending to be your financial officer, to $50,000 to someone, there's no link in it, right? So how are you gonna detect that? So we started thinking that, okay, we got the website part pretty well covered, right? But there's one piece that we don't have any technology for. So around 2018, we started building, I would say, world's best engine that can detect phishing SMS regardless of phishing link through natural language processing. And good thing is that we don't upload your information to our cloud. We are running this engine right onto your Android and iOS device without even sending a bit of information to our cloud. So we use it iOS and Android libraries, machine learning libraries, and we put our machine learning engine into that. So I think that your privacy is fully preserved, and we are able to do it within few MB of memory that is actually required by iOS and Android. And another thing that we are doing is what we're gonna do attacks where the attack is completely spear phishing attacks, right? Or it is tied with a particular geolocation, right? So in that case, most probably our threat hunting cloud won't be able to sniff that URL from internet, right? Because it's one of attack. So what we're gonna do there? So in order to do that, we have built machine learning within our own browser extension. So now our browser extension has the real-time threat feed. Whatever we are catching through our cloud, we'll block that. But if there's something not in our blacklist, we're gonna kick in our machine learning engine that's gonna run right within browser and gonna determine if it is a phishing page or not. And we are able to do it within 50 milliseconds. So you won't even feel that while you're browsing, this Chrome extension is continuously analyzing the web pages that you're browsing and can make very, very quick decision without exchanging any information with its cloud. So your privacy again is really, really preserved.
And David, I was going to make just to build off this real quick and coming full circle back to Microsoft Office 365. There's some attacks that Atif and team and Atif's built a great way to assess the current environment inside of Microsoft 365. He's mentioned that we run multiple assessments with live customers and prospects. Some of those attacks that he was just highlighting or seeing in those assessments, and that includes these, what I would call these gnarly attacks that are targeted spear phishes delivered through not only Office 365 email, but OneDrive. And in that, it contains a link that goes to basically it resolves locally to the machine. And it obviously with the attempt to steal data, right, or to steal some other information. And those are the very, very sophisticated attacks that would come full circle back at the outset, where you have available to these bad actors machines that are generating these attacks in very automated fashion, and you have to catch them at the time of creation, not only what we do in the cloud, but also on device, so you can prevent these, again, significant number of attacks that are happening by minute, but you can detect those now and block those, and that's what's unique about this engine.
Yeah, this is really amazing. I mean, I think just about every other phishing prevention solution I've seen has been, either email based or just user education based, like telling people don't click on bad stuff. But this, for those gnarly, attacks, to use your word as you described them, this is the solution here that's kind of mind blowing to me. This the AI forensics patented solution with virtual browsers and the natural language processing. This is really cool stuff here. So, Patrick, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about exactly how SlashNext can help. You talked about the assessments. How does that work?
Yeah, and again, never want to make these Phish stories about just us. Obviously, this is about educating and really understanding where you currently sit in your own environment. And I'm a big fan. You always hear this thing of people, process, and technology. We talked a little bit about that on the last webinar, in the attack of the human, right? When we were talking as the ultimate attack vector. And with that, again, part of what we offer is just get a current assessment of your environment, specifically in this case to Office. Again, I'm saying Office 365. I know Microsoft's recently changed the name to Microsoft 365 to represent all their productivity tools. And in this context, we have a very easy way to effectively give you exactly what that assessed environment looks like, meaning what are the current phishing attacks that got through the Microsoft systems and or your other third-party security systems, and what effectively lies in wait right now. I do say it's as simple as 1, 2, 3. You literally plug in your API credentials, which is verified by Microsoft. It's extremely secure, takes 5 minutes. And then we run a match of the live phishing attacks against the database. And we'll tell you in real time what those attacks are. You'll get a screenshot of it. So you actually see what Atif went through. Those attacks that he highlighted are the exact attacks we're seeing in the assessments. And again, hopefully as you get a further understanding here, these are beyond that simple credential email that came from Russia, right? That if I leave you with nothing else and we leave you with nothing else, really, number one, these attacks are very sophisticated. They're very targeted. They're being generated by machines. So you need to use machines to protect yourself. I'd say that is a top level. Second, I'm always a big fan of assess your current state, at least understand where you currently sit. And that's, it's a free service. Use it as you need and really get a full understanding of what currently sits in your environment.
Excellent. I like that. As easy as 1, 2, 3. We've got the link there in the handouts tab on how to request a demo. That's right at the top of the handouts tab. We've talked a lot about these really advanced, gnarly attacks and some of the most innovative solutions I've ever seen to try to prevent these types of attacks. Let's go ahead and go to Q&A now. I brought up the poll question for everyone out there in the audience. What additional information would you like about this solution? And right at the top is the free risk assessment for Microsoft 365. And let's just leave that up while we take your questions. So we encourage your questions. We've got quite a few questions coming in, so let's go ahead and start with those, but keep the questions coming. First one is about Microsoft or Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection. is that going to be enough compared to these types of attacks in the market today? Why would someone use that, or why is that not going to be enough? I guess is my question.
Atif, you want to answer that?
Yes, sir. I think again, I hate to say that. The technology that they are employing to detect this phishing is outdated. They developed this technology about 10, 15 years ago, and they're sticking with it. And the bad guys are moving very quickly. We use Office 365. Personally, I get 2 to 3 phishing emails delivered in my inboxes every week, right? I love to click them because our endpoint is going to block it, but I'm the victim myself. And some of these attacks, I would say that, they're simply beyond their, unless they really, I would say, build a better team, better technology, or maybe acquire some other company that is good enough, it's not going to change. Uh, so I'm not impressed with the Office 365. To be really frank, if I compare it with Proofpoint or even Google, they're much worse than them. Google, in my opinion, and Proofpoint is much better than Office 365. They miss a lot, but they're slightly better than Office 365.
Yeah, let me just build off this. We've talked about it, and Atif mentioned this earlier. I would say 99% of tools or defenses for phishing were designed with that static, trusted reputation approach. And as we've shown here, these pages, they look like they come from legitimate infrastructure. So you can't just look at the domain. B, nothing is static anymore. Everything is dynamic and it's living, it's real time. And so unless you're looking at behavioral analysis, effectively bringing that human view to that page, but do it in a way where it's not just one human, but it's hundreds of thousands of humans effectively. That's what the artificial intelligence is designed to do. So you can now look at that page, determine if it's a phishing attack, what type it is, and just as important, catch that at time of creation. Because as I highlighted before, these things are living 24 hours, 48 hours, and then they go dead. And then the new one spawns. And not only does it spawn through email, they'll try to attack you through SMS. They'll try to attack you on LinkedIn. They'll attack you on your personal email. They're going to attack you wherever you are with whatever communication channel you're using. And they are going to attack you perhaps multiple times through multiple channels simultaneously. And so really back to this point, the reason why Microsoft ATP Defender, as well as these other tools, including Proofpoint and they're good tools out there. We're not saying that they're not bad tools. They just were not designed to detect and block these things. And that's why I think we mentioned this on the last Phish stories. There was a third-party test done by Tolly that showed that Microsoft ATP Defender missed of these targeted spear phishing, the open source fish tank URLs, as well as other phishing attacks. They missed about 70%, right? Same thing with Proofpoint, which was a little bit better, and same thing with Mimecast. And again, it's because all those engines were designed with that static reputation approach, trusted reputation approach, as opposed to dynamic runtime analysis, behavioral analysis that we do.
Yeah, great point. I think you mentioned in a previous event, we talked about how you've got to fight computers with computers. These are bots and these are AI created, and you can't just expect humans to be able to defend against that type of thing. You need something smarter. Here's another good question. So, technically, they're asking, how can we stop these attacks on Microsoft 365 from getting through to our users?
The one way is to actually have our endpoints installed. Advantage of our endpoint is that not only we're going to stop phishing links that are coming from Office 365, it also includes other communication medium. I can tell you my personal story, right? I get phishing links all the time, and our endpoints is able to block it. So we offer browser extensions for desktop. It's a very lightweight extension, and it gives you comprehensive protection against all these phishing links. And we also offer solution for mobile. So if you're concerned about clicking emails from mobile and at the same time SMS, we also offer our mobile solution, and it's all part of the same licensing mechanism, one unified system connected with one single cloud console. And we truly believe that phishing is not an email problem, it's the user problem, right? and the user problem, then you need some kind of endpoint that actually live with user, right? Otherwise you're just spending money stopping one thing, and then other avenues are open.
Yeah. And just to build on that, I think any good security defense is a layered security defense. That's why again, big fan of assess. Make sure you assess and understand where you are. Second, you want to put that layered defense approach in. And as Atif highlighted, that's exactly what we do. We do protect on those endpoints and give you effectively, not only you have some front layer defense, but last layer defense, not only in email, but across anywhere that your human interaction happens across the communication channel. So at that point of click, you want to be able to effectively detect it and block it immediately.
Here's
And
a
one of
good
the good
question.
things we tell people, so when we do the assessment, I mean that gives us the assessment, and then we give them the proof that we are able to detect this phishing way hours and sometimes days before that. So if we were there, we would have actually stopped that attack. So that's part of the assessment. You can see the timestamp of what we detected and when the email come in, and you can clearly see the, I mean, ROI there, right? I mean, you're seeing hundreds of emails right in front of you that you don't even know about. And if you had our endpoints, these would have been stopped long time ago. And most probably you would have cleaned up these emails long time ago as well.
Great point. And here's a related question. Justin's asking, when a new phishing attack type is used, on average, how long does it take SlashNext to adapt and thwart the new type of attack?
We are a pure preemptive solution, right? I mean, a lot of attacks that we are missing, actually, we are detecting that even before the attack is launched. I mean, we usually use the passive DNS data and all other stuff, right? Newly registered domains. At the same time, we are crawling all these cloud services. So a lot of time, our promise is that you have to stop these links before the attack is launched. Otherwise, you can't really stop it, right? So all the thing that we are detecting is preemptive. So by the time the email is generated and the attackers were in a process of setting up all these websites, the attack is already in our blacklist, and you must detect it while they're trying to set up their website, not after the email is launched. Is the missile is launched, right now you have one option to kill it in the air, or you simply kill while it is in the rocket launcher. So I think that's what we do. I mean, pure preemptive is the only way to stop these attacks. And if we miss some, our own device analysis is going to kick in, because own device analysis is going to act in when the page is fully rendered. So just imagine there's a completely unknown attack that we never process. That's fine. The page will open within few milliseconds. Our machine learning engine will detect it and block it. So you see a small glimpse of the page for a second, and by that time the phishing page is replaced by a warning page.
I love that. Preemptive is the only way to go. Great
Only way to
point.
go.
Yeah, next question from Sean, who asked, do you offer any customized rules against mail phishing or mail spoofing?
We are not exactly an email solution, right? We offer browser extensions. So we act when the user click on that, right? So even if we provide some links, I mean, it's not gonna be working. So we not really an email spoofing solution. Unless if there's no link involved, at this time, we can't do anything about it.
But
Okay.
and to this point, that's why I was highlighting it. A good defense is a multi-layered defense. Right? We're not advocating you replace 100% of your security, your email security. There's other things that it does. What you do want to do is make sure that you're protecting not only your email at time of click of a link, but also all those other communication channels. And the best way that we know how to do that, and Atif can certainly talk about this, the reason why we deploy at the browser, we deploy on the mobile phone, is you actually want to see the traffic in clear text and the ability to, again, look at that and effectively detect and block. Where obviously we're doing the detection in the cloud and do the detection on device, but you have to have the ability to actually see that and then block it. With TLS 1.3, for those out there in the audience, everyone knows that's a standard everyone's adopting, end-to-end encryption. Atif showed the WhatsApp attack. The only way you're going to see that is on the device, right, at that endpoint, and be in that clear text chain. Otherwise, how the heck are you ever going to test it or be able to block it? And so we do protect email at the time of click, but we also protect all those other communication channels. And it is a complementary defense that you're going to have in place.
Great point. Yeah, more and more these are multifaceted attacks, not just from email, with all the examples you showed. In fact, here's back to your Google reCAPTCHA demonstration there. Paul's asking, how serious of an issue is fake Google reCAPTCHA phishing with Office 365 users for their credentials? Would users need to consider any special steps to mitigate this threat?
Well, if you're relying on the user to stop these type of attacks, right, then I think all these phishing training companies, they need to actually incorporate latest material. I'm seeing that most of the attacks or most of the stuff that they're actually teaching other people are actually very conventional. So, I think if the way to go is that, okay, I don't want to have another system and I want to rely on training, I think then you guys should push these training companies to actually take a look at recent attacks and then just incorporate those into those. But again, humans are, you can't rely on humans, right? If I'm in a bad mood, I'm more inclining to click on a link, right, that I would normally won't click, right? So we are not rational all the time, and that's the biggest problem. When we are in a bad mood, we keep on clicking stuff, right? So it doesn't matter how much training you do. People are gonna. And plus, another thing is that people are used to clicking on captcha. There's nothing really suspicious about Google captcha. We see it every day, right? So how can you tell people, okay, do not solve this captcha but that captcha when both the captcha look the same?
And that goes right to that very point. You have to be able to get beyond that evasive technique. And the only way you do that is with the machine learning, the dynamic behavioral analysis, and actually move beyond that particular captcha. So don't depend on the user. And as he's highlighting, don't depend on the user through training. We see this happens over and over again. The same click happy people that you trained, when you come back around that next quarter or that next 6 months, they do the same thing. They're always in the top of that list. And so you're never really going to train it out of them. And just as important, I almost put a challenge out to everyone in the audience. We can show you some more of these attacks. I challenge you to take a look at them. Can you tell by the discernible eye, even with training, not to do something? That's the key point here. That's why I call them the gnarly attacks, because they look very, very well formed. They look like part of my business context, and it's not something I would necessarily just avoid. And as Atif was pointing, it's not just when you get angry, but or you're in a bad mood. It's also the context. I am working on my device with multiple different distractions going on during the day since we're all remote. And you have all these secondary communication channels. I could get an SMS, I go over here, go back to this, I go into LinkedIn, go into all these other things. I forget where I am. And that also opens up that attack surface. So the only way you can protect against this is actually using, I've said this before, fight machines with machines, and do it at the point of interaction on that device.
Well said. Well said. Henry's asking, is there any way to trace back the source after initial detection, more of a proactive role besides just detection and prevention?
Track back. Well, I think the finding adversary, I would say, is a very complicated process. It took us, I think, 3 years to find who were behind DNC, right? Attacks, right? The problem is that most of these links are coming from legitimate infrastructure. So you got a link from Dropbox, and now unless the Dropbox, you get a subpoena to Dropbox and let them tell you, okay, which was the guy who actually created that PDF, there's no track back. So, I would love to tell people a little bit more about from where the attack came from, but because they are actually hidden behind all these cloud services and compromised domains, right? And a lot of time these vendors wouldn't really share any information. It used to be very easy. When you register a new domain, you can track back and you can look into the infrastructure, passive DNS record, where this IP is located. The moment you start using legitimate infrastructure, the trail is lost actually right from there. There's no way the Dropbox is going to give you the that guy's information unless you subpoena them.
Hey, Atif, you probably should add that we do have a effectively incident response capability as well with the service. So you have the ability to investigate the attack, get full understanding of the information, effectively the metadata information of that attack. But just as he was pointing out, Atif did some pretty phenomenal research here, unrelated to exactly what we're talking about here, but on some other attacks with COVID vaccine, and very suspicious that it was coming from North Korea and Iran, as well as China, obviously with the intent to attack lab technicians to steal the vaccines or vaccine information. But to this point, very, very hard to understand exactly where that came from because they are coming from these legitimate infrastructures.
But it was only possible because I got some guys to actually share that information from that data center, right? So again, I mean, we give you the complete forensic information that is in the page. We give you the complete screenshot, everything, right? But then if it comes to the point that, okay, you want to see, okay, which human sitting in some other country is attacking you, I think it's a complicated process. And actually attackers are actually making it much more difficult to do that.
Yeah. Hey, the final thing I'll note here, we do have effectively community APIs for the threat hunters. It's a free piece, and you can go actually, if you have a suspicious URL, you want to know if it's a Phish or not, you can actually submit it through that community API. It'll go into that exact engine that Atif highlighted, and it'll give you a result. Is it a Phish or not? And it will tell you all the effectively the information about that particular attack.
Excellent. And this is another question that came in. They're asking, can the threat stop at the router level or service provider level after the first phishing or threat is reported? So once it's reported and identified, is there some way to keep it from going any further?
Well, it really depends. If the domain is a dedicated phishing domain, then of course you can block that after the attack is done. But the problem is that, I mean, how are you going to block Dropbox? First of all, you cannot do the blocking of the full URL because it's HTTPS. Unless you have the man in the middle going on, you don't even have the full URL, right? And you can't really do it at the domain level, right? So the answer is that in cases where it's a dedicated benign domain, you can go blacklist at your firewall level and all that. If it is dropbox.google.com, unless you have man in the middle label, you cannot really whitelist that full URL. So it's complicated. And that's one of the reason we built browser extension, because we knew that, okay, the things are extremely becoming difficult at the network level. If you want to stop a Dropbox attack, there's no way you can stop it at your firewall level because you need a full URL. The domain itself is not enough.
It's amazing how complex these attacks are becoming. I know we're running out of time here. I wanted to ask you, Patrick, before we go, if folks sign up for the risk assessment, can you just kind of walk us through what would happen next? What's the process?
So again, you can go to our website, simply put in your information, and again, it literally is as simple as 1, 2, 3 to run the assessment. But again, put in your information. We'll actually just reach back out to you, give you access to the system to run that. You can run it effectively on your own. You put in your credentials, your OAuth credentials into Microsoft 365, and then everything happens in the background. It takes literally about 5 minutes. So that's, again, quick process. Just obviously you can reach directly through one of the contacts that we've provided through the webinar.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm afraid we're running out of time here. Atif, it's been excellent having you on. A real pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. And Patrick, always great to have you on the Phish Stories events as well.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and thanks a lot.
Thanks for it.
All right. And thank you so much, of course, to SlashNext for supporting the event. Don't forget about the handout resources that are available there in your audience console. And then before we go, I want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card that's going out to Brad Quick from Montana. Congratulations, Brad Quick. We'll reach out to you to deliver that prize. Thank you for everyone joining us on the event today. And thanks for all the excellent questions. Really appreciate those as well. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.